Amid fears of a possible NATO move against Russia's Kaliningrad region, Putin has reportedly called in his close nuclear-armed ally, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Lukashenko's visit to Russia comes as Putin appears to be preparing for the possibility of a more direct confrontation between Moscow and NATO. Putin may urge Lukashenko to keep Belarusian forces and military assets on standby amid rumors surrounding a possible mini-nuclear attack. Lukashenko's visit comes just as Russia is reported to have used a new nuclear-capable missile for the first time in the Ukraine war. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has arrived in Russia for a working visit, where he is scheduled to hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Lukashenko is also set to meet Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, with their discussions expected to focus on trade, investment, and wider economic cooperation. Belarus hosts Russian tactical nuclear weapons on its territory, a factor that has further strengthened its role as one of Putin's most strategically important military allies. The visit comes after Russia conducted major military exercises in the Kaliningrad exclave, which lies between NATO members Poland and Lithuania. Putin has said Russia will defend the Kaliningrad region, which is geographically separated from mainland Russia and surrounded by NATO nations. Lukashenko's trip also follows CIA Director John Ratcliffe's surprise visit to Moscow, where he held talks with Russian intelligence officials but did not meet Putin. Ratcliffe reportedly conveyed a warning against any Russian attack on NATO member states, according to people familiar with the purpose of his Moscow visit. Details of the Belarusian president's arrival in Moscow were reported by the Russian state news agency TASS on August 27. The Putin-Lukashenko meeting is expected to cover bilateral cooperation, regional security concerns, and pressing developments on the wider international agenda. Days before his Russia visit, Lukashenko had made significant remarks concerning Russia, adding further attention to his meeting with Putin in Moscow. Alexander Lukashenko said, and I quote, "Unlike all other countries, which, naturally, are friends of Russia but don't want to publicly voice anything, we don't shy away from any issues, whether convenient or inconvenient. We say openly that we consider it an honor to cooperate with Russia, and we will continue to do so. You can be sure of that. It's not that the situation is pushing us in this direction. It's that we set this course long ago, several decades ago, and we are faithfully adhering to it," unquote. Kremlin-linked sources told Bloomberg that Vladimir Putin is preparing to escalate Russia's war in Ukraine after concluding that peace negotiations have reached a dead end. A growing number of Russian officials reportedly believe that a tactical nuclear weapon could be considered as a last resort measure if Moscow's position deteriorates further. However, Bloomberg reported that there are currently no signs Russia is preparing to use tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Russia has repeatedly issued nuclear threats since the invasion began, using its nuclear arsenal as a tool to intimidate Ukraine and discourage deeper Western military support. Details of Putin's reported escalation plans were carried by Meduza on August 27, citing Bloomberg's reporting and Kremlin-linked sources. Moscow's emerging strategy is reportedly based on the assessment that all meaningful frameworks for a negotiated peace settlement have effectively collapsed. Russia is now weighing an intensification of powerful conventional ballistic missile attacks against Kyiv, rather than an immediate nuclear escalation. Potential targets reportedly include central Kyiv as well as critical infrastructure in other Ukrainian cities, which could increase risks for civilians and essential services. Kremlin sources said, and I quote, "Russian President Vladimir Putin will not end the war under pressure from economic sanctions or Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil refineries and logistics networks. Moscow increasingly views Ukrainian strikes as attacks by NATO member states because alliance members supply Kyiv with weapons and intelligence. Every mechanism for peace talks has collapsed, leaving the two warring sides back where they started. The Kremlin believes that it has already made concessions during the war and that each one weakened Russia's position. In the absence of diplomacy, Moscow sees few ways to achieve its military goals other than further escalation. The intensifying Ukrainian strikes have led a growing number of Russian officials to believe that Putin could eventually take the extreme step of using tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine." Against the backdrop of sustained tensions between Russia and NATO, the Russian Navy's Baltic fleet carried out tactical air defense drills near Kaliningrad on August 26. The purpose of the exercise was to rehearse how Baltic fleet units would respond to and repel a simulated enemy air raid aimed at their naval base and nearby military facilities. Crews from ships stationed at the Baltic naval base carried out their assigned training tasks, including surveillance, target detection, threat classification, and the simulated destruction of hostile aircraft. Under the drill scenario, Su-30 multirole fighters, Mi-24 helicopters and unmanned aerial vehicles from the fleet's drone units acted as the simulated attacking force. After detecting and classifying the incoming targets, the warship crews used their anti-aircraft missile and artillery systems to notionally destroy the simulated enemy force. The drills came amid continuing NATO military activity around the Baltic Sea, where alliance members have increased surveillance, exercises, and force readiness following Russia's war in Ukraine. Russia has previously rejected calls for the Baltic Sea to become what Moscow describes as a NATO inland sea, arguing that the alliance's expanding presence threatens Russia's security interests in the region. President Vladimir Putin has said Russia would respond to any emerging threats to Kaliningrad, a heavily militarized Russian exclave position between NATO members Poland and Lithuania. NATO held a large air exercise on August 18, days after Russia's own military activity near Kaliningrad, bringing Allied aircraft together over Poland and the wider Baltic region. Around 25 aircraft from various NATO member states were reported to have joined the August 18 activity, although outside estimates varied and could not be fully verified by alliance officials. US, Polish and Lithuanian aircraft were detected in the region alongside American R-64E Apache attack helicopters, reflecting the multinational and multi-role nature of the exercise. A NATO E-3A Sentry aircraft operating over northern Poland provided airborne early warning, battle management and command and control support for the wider air package. A U.S. Air Force EA-37B Compass Call electronic warfare aircraft operated near the Baltic approaches to Kaliningrad, while Artemis carried out intelligence and surveillance missions in the same area. The presence of several aerial refueling tankers was notable because it showed that prolonged time in the air and extended operational endurance were central to the day's training activity. Separate military aviation activity was also recorded over waters between Norway and Denmark, adding to the broader picture of heightened NATO air operations across northern Europe. A British P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft and a German military aircraft were tracked conducting flights for several hours between Norway and Denmark, though their specific mission was not publicly disclosed. The exact aim of the separate Norwegian-Danish flights remains unclear, and there is no public evidence that they were directly connected to the Kaliningrad air exercise. Russia has reportedly used its upgraded Iskander-1000 ballistic missile for the first time in combat, introducing a newer variant of the weapon into the war. Russia reportedly deployed the Iskander-1000 for the first time during an attack on Kiev, according to Military Watch magazine, marking a significant development. Ukraine's Directorate of Intelligence reported that the missile struck a target in Kiev on August 27, during Russia's large-scale aerial assault. Ukrainian officials identified the missile as the 9M723-2, describing it as an upgraded version of the 9M723-1 missile used by the Iskander-M system. Kiev residents were forced to shelter inside metro stations during a rare all-day Russian aerial attack, as the capital remained under threat for hours. Explosions in Kiev began around 3 a.m. on August 27 and continued into the morning, according to the Kiev Independent, keeping residents on alert through the night. Russia targeted Kiev with jet-powered drones, while powerful blasts and the sound of Ukrainian air defense fire could be heard across the city. Drone debris was found across several Kiev districts, including Podilsky, Shevchenkivsky, Holosievsky and Pechersky, according to local reports. The attack also damaged 2 schools and a sports facility, while a fire was reported near the Valery I. Lobanovsky Stadium amid the continuing strikes. Russia also struck warehouses in Kiev Oblast, injuring at least 1 person, according to Ukraine's State Emergency Service.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.